Dr. Larry Crabb and his wife Rachel of 47 years live in the Denver, Colorado area. They have 2 grown sons in their 40s, 5 grandchildren. For all the years that this clinical psychologist has been enriching my life, primarily through his books and recent interviews too, I didn't fully appreciate how much his wisdom and insights are tied to his personal journey. Wow. Larry, you have revised a wise saying. I'm going to quote, "There is no greater tragedy in human existence than an unexplored life. Our spiritual survival depends on it."
Yes. I believe that with all my heart. After being a psychologist for all these years, it just seems so clear to me that people are not moving in the directions that we're destined to move in until we take a hard look within ourselves and see what's getting in the way. It's just a big mistake to define sin at just some external level, because at that level, I'm not much of a sinner. I don't do many bad things at a real obvious level.
Your life looks pretty good on the outside.
Life's good on the outside. I love my wife. My kids are going great. 5 gorgeous grandkids. Hey, I'm doing fine. Who needs Jesus? Or maybe I do, if I look more deeply into my soul and realize without him, I'm not going to ever become the man I'm called to be.
This is a huge title, and wow, quite an exploration. Fully Alive, a biblical vision of gender that frees men and women to live beyond stereotypes. You've introduced me to a new term very early in the book, relational sin.
I don't understand why that term is so unfamiliar to most everybody. It was unfamiliar to me for years and years and years, until I realized that if God is who he says he is, a community of 3 persons, one God, 3 persons, a mystery nobody will ever figure out. But if he's relational, when the Bible tells us in Romans 3 that we fall short of the glory of God, what is the glory we fall short of? I fall short of the relational glory of God. I don't relate the way he relates within himself and the way he relates to me. Relational sin is moving toward you with my well-being in mind at any cost to you. Relational holiness is moving toward you with your well-being in mind at any cost to me. That's how God relates.
So that the character of God
yes.
is revealed.
That's
his
exactly
glory.
It. That's what we're called to do all things for the glory of God. What a simple little phrase we throw around all the time without realizing that it means something huge by the way I relate to you, to my wife, to my kids, to people I don't like, to people that hurt me, to people that irritate me. How do I relate to them? How did God relate to me? Did I ever irritate him? Did I fall away from him? And he said, how could I put up with you in Hosea? But he says, I can't give you up. Therefore, I'm going to move toward you in grace. I'm going to move into your mess. I'm going to die for you. I'm going to rise from the grave. I'm going to take you to heaven. Relate like me. And anything else is relational sin.
Hence your encouragement to get a vision of our high calling.
Yes.
It's a high calling and responsibility.
And it's so high that it demands the gospel. One of the things I felt as a psychologist for years in psychotherapy, I came to the conclusion that if I diagnose a problem that does not require the cross for its solution, I haven't found the real problem. But when I discover what's really going on in me, I fall to my knees and say, have mercy. And God says, I already have. You're forgiven. It's all right. Come live.
Larry, when did you take off the clinical expert hat and become, well, you say a learner, which interestingly is the meaning of the word disciple. When did you make that huge switch?
Did I take off the clinical hat? I think when I got honest enough to face my own soul and had enough experience in facing the souls of other people that I realized all my clinical training, my PhD in clinical psychology, wasn't adequate to deal with what I was really seeing in the depths of people's lives. You know, I have a PhD, but pronounce it. It isn't too impressive. Fud.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, well, I just made it up.
You have a food.
But rather than thinking in terms of myself as an expert, there's no experts in the soul. I sometimes wish I'd have been a physician or a plumber because there are experts in plumbing. My surgeons were experts. But when I start talking to people, I realize that what's really going on in me and in you doesn't require expertise, it requires wisdom. And wisdom comes from humility. And wisdom comes from studying the Bible. Wisdom comes from prayer. And that's why I see myself much more now as a soul friend or a spiritual director, but not a psychotherapist.
Are you still, by the way, spiritual director of the American Association of Christian Counselors?
I have been for a number of years, and just by virtue of time and pressures, I did resign from that position. but I still have a great opportunity to provide spiritual direction in a variety of settings.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that
was
your
that for a number of
expertise has hugely been acknowledged. We don't have time to break this down, but I mean, you're taking this challenge. Let me first say that you say the church's response
Yes.
to our culture's sex and gender confusion seems inadequate to me. And you highlight patriarchal traditionalists, complementarians, egalitarians. Oh boy, like you are courageous to even take this discussion
Well, there's some
into
people,
the church.
There's some people who aren't mad at me yet, so this book will take care of that.
Oh.
But I do think it's an important thing to think about, and I think the church needs to face up to the deep questions and stop fighting and fussing about whether we're traditionalists or egalitarians. Egalitarians are properly saying that women are not inferior to men, and their opportunities are equivalent to whatever God wants them to become. Traditionalists are very fair in saying that there are differences in male and female, but rather than fighting about traditionalism and egalitarianism, let's go beneath the surface. Let's go into the souls of a woman and the souls of men and ask, what are we designed to do? How are we to uniquely represent our relational God as men and women? And that's the essential topic of the book.
Could you define simply what an authentic feminine female is?
You really want me to take that risk?
We can always edit it out.
All right, let's try. Well, if you, from the biblical data, when God begins by saying, let's make a male and female, the word for female in the Hebrew, and I won't even pretend to know how to pronounce it, but the word means one who is opened to receive. A woman who is feminine is a woman who is relationally inviting as opposed to controlling.
Or heaven forbid, roaring.
That's another possibility. When Adam and Eve sinned and God came and pronounced certain judgments on them, he said to the woman, your desire shall be for your husband. But that's a mistranslation, I'm convinced. What it actually means is your desire is going to be to control your husband, to see to it he doesn't hurt you. And then the woman becomes very protective, and I'm not going to be hurt, and I'm going to see to it that you behave in ways that don't offend me. And that woman is not feminine. But when her response is to say, I'm going to be like Jesus, who invites others, I'm going to be like Jesus, who is open to receive, and when nobody sees the beauty in a woman and wants to come into the beauty that is in her soul, I believe that every woman is profoundly, if she knows Jesus, she's profoundly beautiful on the inside. And when I look at my wife, we've been married for 47 years, we're getting a little bit older now, I think she's more beautiful than when I met her. I met her at 10, we married at 21. She was a gorgeous female. But I think she's more profoundly beautiful as a feminine woman now because she's profoundly invitational. She opens her soul to others to invite them into the beauty of what she can provide. That's a feminine woman.
And what was wrong with your attitude as you stood at that altar at 21 that you talk about in the book?
That could take some time, but I'll give you the brief version of it. The brief version of it was that as a kid, I had my share of problems, the two that I'm willing to mention. I had a lot of pimples. My face wasn't terribly attractive. And I stuttered, and that was terribly embarrassing. I had many opportunities to feel very, very bad about stuttering in front of my high school when I was made president. And I stuttered in front of 800 kids, and they all laughed at me. And I didn't like feeling bad about myself, but here's this pretty girl named Rachel who thought I was kind of neat, whether I had pimples, whether I stuttered or not. And when I married her, I believe what I was really saying beneath the surface, not out loud, I said the right words out loud, what I was really saying was, I want to live with you. I want you to be my wife so you can continue to make me feel the way I want to feel about myself as a man. That's your job, and I commit myself to be available for your ministry to me in that way.
But today you are an authentically masculine male.
Moving in that direction, hopefully.
And that looks how?
That looks like when there are difficulties and tensions as inevitably come up in every relationship in all of life, am I going to back away? Am I going to move away from relationship and move into my sphere of competence? Or am I going to move into the depths of another human soul, wanting to minister to that person, to my wife, to my kids, to my grandkids, to my friends, in any way that reveals the character of God? When I'm doing that to somebody else, I like that phrase, not that to somebody else, when I'm relating in that manner with somebody else, then I feel alive as a man, and I think I'm bringing God glory, and my wife kind of enjoys it.
You know, this makes so much sense. It's wonderful. a strong emphasis on community in this paradigm too, which we don't have time to unpack because I really want to take us to, I just think it's a gift. You have 4 don'ts at the end of this book. They are exactly the same for the woman as the man. I'm going to state them, and we just have a couple of minutes, but a quick word from Dr. Crabb. These are your don'ts. Don't label yourself by your struggles and symptoms.
Because that is not our core identity. Because of the gospel, my core identity is God's son or God's daughter, not a struggler, not somebody with all these problems. Are those problems there? Yes, but they don't define who I am. Labels make a difference.
Don't define yourself by your history and emotions.
And when we do define ourselves by our history or emotions, we can define ourselves, in my wife's case, as a sexual abuse victim.
Oh, really?
And she's been open about that, so I'm breaking no confidence. But when she told me that she had been sexually abused, my first thought was get in a sexual abuse recovery group, and there's a place for that, of course. They can be very helpful. But Rachel's response was, I don't want to be in a group of women who define themselves by their history as an abuse victim. I define myself, Rachel said, as God's beautiful daughter who, by the way, and very painfully, was sexually abused. Don't define yourself by your history.
Great illustration. Don't identify yourself by your circumstances and challenges.
So it's so easy to do that. I can define myself by my circumstances in terms of how many books have I written and whatever success I might have enjoyed. I can define myself by other circumstances, the kind of house I live in, and the culture encourages me to define myself by my circumstances or by my challenges. Well, look at these challenges I faced, aren't I something? Until we define ourselves by who Christ is within us and how we can reveal Christ through us, we're not identifying ourselves properly.
And number 4, don't limit yourself by your success and satisfaction. This is going beyond our stereotype, isn't it?
Way beyond our stereotypes. Don't limit yourself by your success or by your satisfaction. Don't limit yourself by what makes you feel good, because sin can make you feel good for a season. But that better not be what it's all about. Limit yourself only by the gospel, which is limitless. I can become the man God has called me to be. A woman can become the woman she was called to be without the limits of whether I'm successful in this way or whether I'm feeling good at any given moment.
I'm going to ask our viewers to pray for you so that we can have you back with that autobiography, Sovereign Stumbling, because I just love your stumbling journey and what it produces.
Yeah.
Dr. Crabb, thank you so much.
Thank you, Moira.
The book is at our e-store, Fully Alive, a biblical vision of gender that frees men and women to live beyond stereotypes. You getting it a little bit? It's new thinking, so much of it. And I'm just going to quote Dr. Crabb in closing. When we know God well enough to value nothing greater than our opportunity to enjoy Him and reveal Him to others by the way we relate, we will then become more and more alive as masculine men and feminine women. Love it. Thank you, Dr. Crabb.
Thank you very much.